one of FAFA's, one of being involved with FAFA, I've just really begun to appreciate illustrators and their role in storytelling for children's books. It's really incredible. It's an art, it's a craft, it's a skill. And so I was really excited. If I had smaller kids, I would be, or actually I'd be buying Patty's books, but I don't. They're all grown and out and they don't have kids yet. So I have to wait to be a grandparent before I get to indulge. I encourage everyone to go to her Amazon.com author page. And what I'm going to do is put that in the chat and visit. I think there are listed, at least there, 9 children's books, along with 2 edited anthologies I think she's put together on art and poetry, which is another craft I've really become to appreciate as well. So Patty has so many different talents and skills. She's a publisher. She ran an independent bookstore for a couple of years. Obviously illustrator, speaker, and a former FAFA president. So actually, I think I probably have, she's responsible probably for me being on the board. So I don't know if I'm still good with that or not. But anyway, I'm here and I continue to participate. And she's also she has the author of the critically acclaimed workbook, 365 Bright Ideas for Marketing Your Indie Book. So that I did not see on the Amazon author page. So hopefully Patty will tell us how we can get a hold of that in this. But without any further ado, the only thing I would say is definitely as your ideas or your questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat and then we'll make sure we bring them and cycle in. You can also send them to me directly. Actually, no, you can't. I think you'd have to send it to Pat because she's the host. If I don't think you have the option of well, maybe let me check here. No, you can't. Send them to me as a private message if you don't want to do that. And I'll encourage everyone to actually, I think everybody does have their names up, which is great because that helps the discussion and that helps the moderator, me. It also helps the speaker as we get into questions as well. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat and then, or direct message me, or, we'll see how it goes. But with no further ado, I am going to hand this over to Patty. So I'm really excited about this. So it's very cool.
Thanks, Sam. This is where we find out if can you hear me?
We can.
Sweet. I have to say, I just had a kind of a moment of panic because I really could only see you, Sam, and then the top row of people, and I thought, oh, this is a small crowd, this will be fun. And then I realized I could expand it, and hello, everyone. I did not know there were so many people there. Yay. And Sam, it's not my fault. I didn't vote for you to be on the board, actually. If you guys know me, any of you who have worked with me before, I actually came into the publishing world because somebody talked me into taking a series of Valentine's Day cards that I had illustrated as a gift for someone, and I turned it into a children's book. And so the first book was the How Long Will You Love Me? And I knew how to be an artist, but I didn't know how to be an illustrator. And that really took some time to figure it all out. And I talked to a lot of people who write children's books or not just picture books, but also books like that Jane writes for older readers, middle grade things. And finding out how to get I do not know what that is. Finding out how to work with an illustrator, how do you find one? How does the process work? All of that is something that people don't seem to really know a lot about. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus on tonight is if you're looking for an illustrator, what can you expect from working with them? Just how does the process work? All of those kinds of things. So I did a PowerPoint.
I had the thing.
Pat, can you mute?
What?
Pat, can you
What?
mute,
What?
please?
What?
Can you mute, please?
You mute, please.
Mute what?
Mute
Mute.
you.
There she goes. Okay. So I'm going to go through this. I am not fantastic about being able to read the comments as they come in. So that is something that I am hoping that Sam is going to stay on top of for me. Maybe you don't see all of my other stuff, you guys. There you go. Okay. Can we see that? Sam, can you see that? You're the only one I can see. Okay, good. Okay, so even if you're, like I said, if you're not doing a picture book, but you're doing more of a middle grade, or like right now, journals are big. So a lot of those are looking to have illustrations in them. So everything that I'm going to go over is kind of generic as far as how it all works. But if you have questions specifically about, whatever it is your project might be, when you ask, I'll be able to address those, because I've illustrated for a lot of different things. Mark Wayne Adams, by the way, he mentioned earlier, Sam mentioned earlier, was actually sort of the mentor that got me started. I showed him a book that I had done, and he made a lot of suggestions on how to make the next one better, which was amazing. I didn't even know there was a next one until that very moment. So let's see. Oh, okay. All right. So in finding the perfect illustrator, first of all, if you are publishing traditionally, you don't worry about finding an illustrator. If you're more of a hybrid, working with a hybrid publisher, and you have a publisher, an illustrator that you would like to work with, I think in most cases they would entertain that. But if you've got a major traditional contract, they're going to find your publisher for you. So kick back, have a cocktail while we talk about this, because you don't need to go through this process. The way I look at, when I'm looking at art that I would like to inspire me, or when I'm telling somebody how to look for art that they like, that they might like for their book, I like to go to the library. I go to the children's section. I sit cross-legged on the floor. I do need help getting up now, but I sit cross-legged on the floor, and I just start pulling out books, and I put them into stacks. I put them into things that a stack of things that I really like, but would probably never use, and then another stack of things that I like, and things maybe that I don't like and why I don't like them. And if you do that, if you go kind of through that process, then what you find out is what it is that really appeals to you. And if it appeals to you, it's probably going to appeal, be something that you could use for your book. Now, some people will say that when you're going through that stack, if you pull the illustrator's name, because illustrators always get their names, if not on the cover of the book, at least on the copyright page, you can reach out to that. This is, we got social media, you got the internet, you can find those illustrators and reach out to them. If they're doing work on books that are in the bookstore, in the library, they may be so busy that they don't have time for more projects, or they may just have done just one book or two books already, and their author or their publisher was just good about getting them into the library. So not necessarily create the list, but kind of create the ideas of what it is that you might want to have, what kind of style you might like. Also, if you go to Amazon and you check out the best-selling books in your niche, so if you write for middle grade, or you write children's books about dogs or whatever, if you go to Amazon, kind of niche down to get closest to what it is that you're attempting to write, and then look through those and see what the popular styles are. Now, the key, of course, anytime you're doing that with covers or anything on Amazon, is to make sure that you're fitting in to the genre and what's trendy and popular, but you're also still finding a way to stand out so that you're a little bit different and not getting lost. On these screens, I tried to put a little pro tip when I had one. This is something, I've had this happen to me a couple of times. What I wrote was, know what style you like and find the illustrator who does that, instead of finding an illustrator and then asking them to step into that style. I've had authors come and say, can you do this for me? My book is about knights and princesses and dragons, and I would like it in, pen and ink. And I'm like, that I don't do any of that. That would not work out. As much as I would want to work with you on your book, that's not what I do. So find the style that you want, and then find an illustrator that fits into that. Sorry. Where and how to find them. Professional organizations like the Society for Children's Book, WI, Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I don't ever remember what that all stands for, but that's where you can go, and it's an organization where you can find almost any illustrator for any genre that you're looking for. That's what that group is. Also, professional organizations like FAFA, where there may be a lot of other children's book authors, where there are people like myself and Mark Wayne Adams and Mike Woodcock. There's a bunch of illustrators who are also FAFA members. So any professional publishing organization or professional artist organization would have those. One of the things that we've always talked about as a board member on FAFA was to create an illustrators gallery to make it easier for people looking for illustrators to be able to see samples without having to go to each individual illustrator's website. So that's kind of still in the works. Hint, hint to the board members who are on tonight. Hint, hint. So yeah, asking other children's book authors. Sometimes it's easier for you to find those other authors than it is to find illustrators. And you can also go to like any of the gig sites like Fiverr or Upwords or Upworks or whatever that's called. There's a whole bunch of those. The thing with finding an illustrator there, a lot of times it will be somebody who is out of the country, that is very talented, but is able to work for maybe a little less money. Just make sure that it's somebody that you can communicate with very well, as far as being able to share your ideas and feedback and all of that. But I know, I think Jen Smith, who's also a FAFA member, works with an illustrator out of India that she found, I believe, on Fiverr. And they've worked together now for years and on a couple of projects. So don't be afraid to look at sites like that, as long as you know what it is you're looking for and you know what the process is. You can also, pro tip is search social media platforms with with hashtags like hashtag illustrator, illustrators of Instagram, those kinds of things. And again, you want to maybe niche down and be able to say, like dog illustrator or, whatever, if you can think of some, something more targeted directly towards what it is that you're looking for exactly. Okay. When you are reaching out to an illustrator, you want to make sure that, like I said before, that you're familiar with their style and that that's the style that you're looking for. You don't want them to try and have to step outside of, their comfort zone in order to, work with an illustrator you like, but not something that they normally do. So what is their style? What medium do they use? Is it watercolors? Is it pen and ink? Those kinds of things you'll have in your mind, especially if you've done the other steps leading up to this, you'll have some sort of an idea of what you want it to look like. And you'll be able to ask them if that's, you'll be able to see in their portfolio if that's something that they do, and whether or not it would be a good fit. As far as experience, everybody's got to start somewhere. I was my first author, so that was easy. I was also the second author that I illustrated for was also me. But after that, I started illustrating for other people. I don't think that necessarily gave me a lot of experience as far as it's concerned. And so somebody had to take a chance and say, yeah, I like what you've done. Can you do my book? So experience, just in that you want somebody who knows what they're doing. They don't have to have done, 40 books, but they kind of have to know what they're doing. Otherwise, it's the blind leading the blind, and who knows what will happen with your book. You should have a very clear description of what your project is, because when you start talking to the illustrator, you're going to want them to give you some sort of a quote, some sort of price range, all of that important stuff to keep you on target with your deadlines and all of that. So the only way they can give you a quote is if they know what your project entails. So children's books, the standard average would, and this is for picture books, is 32 pages. Okay, so 32 pages, and that will include your front and back matter. So the way it's going to lay out is, you're still going to have all the regular things you need in the front of your book. You're still going to have a copyright page. You're still going to have a title page. You're going to have all of that. And so you're going to stay somewhere in there. It's got to be divisible by 4 or 8, depending on how you do math. But letting them know that maybe your story is longer, or maybe you're writing for middle grades, and so you've got chapter books, and so it's not going to have as many illustrations. So they don't need to know that it's going to be 80 pages. They need to know how many illustrations you're going to put in that, because that would be, unlike a children's picture book, you may not have as many illustrations. It might just be chapter headings or something like that. You're going to let them know what kind of artwork you need. Like I said, what style, what medium are you looking for? I have a soft spot for textile illustrations. I don't know how they do it. I have no idea. But that, I think that makes a beautiful book. I tend to buy those for my grandkids all the time. So whatever the artwork, whatever style it is that you want, they need to know that. Very important that they know the dimensions that your book is going to be. My books are 8.5 by 8.5, so they're square, which is a kind of a standard. Excuse me, but they need to know that before they start drawing, because if they make square pictures and you have a rectangle book, excuse me, or if you have a rectangular book and it's tall versus wide, it's going to really screw up all your pictures. So they need to know that before they start drawing. The basic storyline, book details, who's the main character, if there is one. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, I don't think I'm dying now. And who your audience is. So so what's the age of the kids? Is there anything in particular that the illustrator is going to need to know in order to reach out and connect with that audience? And it's okay at that time too to ask about their time frame. A lot of times, a children's book might take, a few months to put together, to do all of the illustrations for it. It can be very time consuming. So if your illustrator is either super busy with a lot of things, or maybe like me, your illustrator has a day job and can only draw at night, you want to make sure that they're going to be able to fit you into their rotation in a way that still fits in with what your deadlines are. If you're trying to get a book out, for the holidays, but your illustrator isn't going to be available until October, that's not going to work for you, and you're going to need to find somebody else. So those are the things that you need to find out just in talking to them. You can reach out by email, especially if somebody's given you a referral. You can do it by phone or in person, if we still do those sorts of things anymore. Or you can send an email. Be professional. And the one no is never tell them that you need them to cut you a break on the price, that you need to donate your time for the exposure, or any of those things. If someone reaches out to me, I'm still at the point where I'm very polite, and I let them know that, this is something that is a job, and but it's a bad thing to do. So that's the only absolute no. The rest of it, especially if you're new, illustrators will they'll be gentle with you. We're gentle people, we artists. The scary part, I think, comes when you realize you have to do a contract. A lot of people don't know what that looks like. Legal stuff can be scary. I don't know how many of you guys were at the conference and sat through the legal presentation that Lorna Davis did. A lot of that sounds like it is really difficult. Your contract with your illustrator, it really can have everything I'm about to talk about. It could have none of the things that I'm about to talk about. There's no standard set contract that you work with. It's really just about coming together, the illustrator and the author or publisher. Sometimes I don't work with the author at all. I just work with the publisher. But coming up with something that makes sense in either ways, going both ways. So I already said you need to make sure that the timeline works for you. And you want to know exactly what the cost of each part is. So, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we go over the timeline. But so that's real important in putting into your contract. If you're doing a payment schedule, which is usually what happens, you talk to you get together and you talk about it. And what I always do, and what most of the illustrators that I know do, is we do a 3, sometimes 4 payment plan, so that I get a deposit. This is just what I do. I get a deposit to get you on my schedule and hold your spot. I won't hold a spot for anybody that hasn't given me a deposit. And then I take another payment when the sketches are done, and the final payment when the rest of it is done. We'll go over that again when we talk about timelines a little bit more in the process. But you want to make sure that. Did you say something, Sam?
Yeah, Patty, got a quick question. I'm not sure if you're going to address this later, but since we're in contract, would in the contract then be, because I notice you have permissions in the bullet point, in the contract, you actually specify how those illustrations will be used and in what capacity.
Right.
And I know in a lot of artwork that you're buying offline or you're using, there are limits to how often those images can be used for copies, in print copies, for example. Is that in the contract?
Yeah, yes. All of that has to be spelled out. And it's hard sometimes when you are, this is one thing Lorna Davis says, and she actually, I have had occasion to work with her outside of FAFA. So, but she said this too in the room on Saturday. It's hard to think big when you're starting out small, but you have to think. So I remember, in the first contract that I wrote out for somebody, I was like, well, I don't think this person's going to, do cartoons, that there's going to be an animated version of their book out there, some movie, right? But what if there was? How would I, as the illustrator, how would I protect my rights to the art? How would the author protect their rights? So even though you're starting out small, you have to think that someday you're going to be big, and that all those things that seem like they don't have anything to do with you now may have something to do with you later. So let's see, a kill fee or cancellation fee. I've had to use that before, the author and I could not connect. It started out with her having me try to take over a project somebody else had bailed on. It was not my style of art. She and I could not connect. And luckily we had a cancellation clause and all of that. So there was no arguing when it came time to dissolve my portion of the project, because it was all spelled out in the contract. And it very easily could have been her that said, in this case, it was me that said I didn't want to participate anymore, but it easily could have been her basically firing me. So you want to have those kinds of things in there too. Permissions, the thing with that is, like Sam was saying, you've got, maybe they're using artwork. Maybe there's artwork that you wanted included and they're using that, or fonts. Fonts is a problem. If they're also doing your cover and they use a font that they don't have rights to or whatever, you kind of have to spell it out in the contract, how something like that's going to happen if there's, if it comes down to somebody saying you can't use that, I own it. Who was the person who said that could be used? Was it the author wanted that, or the illustrator wanted that? And who's responsible for getting the permissions and the licenses and all of that stuff that may be used in it? So that's something you need to talk about, and it can go either way. Again, you have to figure out how that's going to play out. Delivery, how is the final product passing from the illustrator to the publisher or the printer or whoever is the next person in line to get all of those files? What are the files? How are the files delivered? What formats do those need to be in? What's the process there? Who gets it next? I see a hand. Is that a hand?
That is a hand. So I thought it would be less.
That's all I see is a hand.
Yeah, just me butting in, but
okay.
because you already hit the kill fee. But Bruce has a question that's specific to the kill fee. Is that a percentage usually? How is the kill fee determined?
It really, again, everything in the contract is negotiable. So if somebody gives me a deposit and and we start working and they approve the sketches, and then they don't like anything that happens after that. Well, I've still done work. We're still moving forward. So for me, it's more of at what point do I stop the work and do I stop getting paid? And that's another reason to have that cost breakdown, so that that sketches cost this, and adding color costs this, and maybe formatting and layout is kind of this other separate thing. So that you just kind of whatever works for you ahead of time and figure that out. Most of the time people go into it like it's a marriage, and they're like, we'll be together, you and me, the author, and you, the illustrator, and we'll be together forever. And sometimes, and you guys who have worked with illustrators know, sometimes it does not work. And it's okay to divorce your illustrator. You just have to, you have to have your prenup. You have to know what's happening, who gets what. At what point do you still not, at what point does the author own any of the art? So those kinds of things, again, you got to talk about it ahead of time and throw it out there. And then arbitration, should it all go completely sideways, what are the rules? What's the process?
We have another question. I think it's Diane. I don't know. It's another administrator. So who's, go ahead if you have a question. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Eileen.
Eileen. Okay.
Yes, yes. Hi, dear. This is so informative. I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm in the middle of writing my second book, and I have a question with permissions. I do photography work, and I'm going to use some of my photography in the book. However, I think it makes the book more interesting when I have some illustrations and coupled, put in with that. Now, as far as permission goes, I see these things on the internet. Can you use those pictures if they're public or if they're in the newspaper? You want to use something? No. Okay. I'm going to let you. How does this permission thing, what do I need to get permission for, and where don't I necessarily need permission?
The easiest thing is to just assume that if you find something you like on the internet, somebody who created it owns it, and it is not available. That's just the easiest things. Just assume that you need to track down who owns it and find out if you can use it for what you want to use it for. Canva, I don't know how many of you use Canva, but the cover of my 365 marketing book, the light bulb portion of that cover was a graphic that I found on Canva, and I ended up being able to buy a limited license to use that. It only cost me $100, and I paid that, and I can use it. I think our agreement is that I can use it until I've sold 50,000 books, and then I got to give them another $100. So sometimes it's super simple. Sometimes, if we're talking about like a font or a font, you should be able to track down who owns that and find out and be able to read what the licenses are. Because fonts, when you download a new font, and if you don't have a crazy font addiction like I do, maybe other people don't just download them all the time, but when you download it, it comes with usually a page that you can read and find out what you're allowed to use it for, because it is something that somebody else created. Now, you're lucky because you use your own photography, so you absolutely own all of that. But imagine if somebody wanted to use one of your photos for maybe the cover of a journal they were doing. They don't own it. They would have to come to you, and then you would decide whether or not you wanted to just let them use.
Patty, somehow you muted again.
That totally answered your question or not, but
yeah,
is very helpful, Patty. Are there, if you wouldn't mind, after the conference, is there sites? Because I have no idea where you can buy or you can look at free stuff.
I just
if you can just, after your conference, if there's a way that you can just text me or email me.
Sure. I actually, in part of in the 365 marketing book that I wrote, there's a whole section on using other graphics and stuff. And I'll just send you a PDF of that particular task. And
you're incredible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay. So other things about the contract. Sometimes there is an agreement between the author and the illustrator about splitting royalties, about the illustrator taking a portion of royalties. Most of the time, however, you're going to just pay a flat fee for having the illustrations done for your book. And before anybody asks, that can really range, if your niece does it, she might only charge you a couple $100 to do all the illustrations for your book. But if you use a professional who, has some experience and stuff, I would say for a 32 page picture book, you're looking at anywhere between couple $1,000s and, you know, $6,000, $12,000. It really depends on the project. And illustrators know that you don't really have an idea of what it is so they're gonna tell you, because they don't want to start doing work that they, you know, that they're not getting paid for whatever their talent and time and everything is worth. I actually, the closest I have come to a royalty split was that I have worked with a couple of authors, and I took inventory as part of what I got out of it. And that was free books to me, and I sold them at events and stuff. And so that made it a little easier for me to not really cut a new author a break, but kind of cut a new author a break. So you can get very creative with it. It's important to understand that the artist retains the rights to the artwork in most cases. And what the author is getting is the reproduction rights. So those have to be laid out in the contract. So it might be that the author also wants to do T-shirts or you know, coffee mugs or whatever. And so the illustrator would have to decide if that was something that they were okay with doing, which in the most cases is going to be yes, they are. Now the illustrator may say, you know, I love that character so much that I'm going to also do swag on my own site. And that's something that you just have to work out in the beginning. How much of the reproduction rights, what those entail for the author. Territories. Again, it's hard to think big when you're starting out small, but if your book really catches on and you're starting to sell it in multiple countries and everything, does your contract cover that? Because now you've increased sales and now it's a whole different animal, and the artist is, you know, is part of what is getting you there. And so you just have to spell those kinds of things out. And it can be, all of this could just be the author gets everything, the illustrator gets nothing, and everybody's good with that. And you pay for the work and move along. It's not really like a marriage. You really can just pack your bags and go. Time limits on that, electronic rights. And again, like I was saying, animation. So if it turns into a cartoon, because at that point, if it turns into something like that, you know, I was going to say this is a bad example because I don't even know, but say like SpongeBob, the SpongeBob story was written by somebody, but the SpongeBob character was created by somebody else. So when there are SpongeBob pajamas, who's entitled to that money? So that kind of stuff, again, you're small, but you could be big. That stuff kind of needs to be examined at some point. And it's something that could be added as an amendment later, as you know, as contracts can go, but it's something to think about. Don't get bogged down on it, you know, but it's something to think about. Okay, so the process. So you found an illustrator, and then you've talked to them, and then you've got the contract, and you're negotiating back and forth. You make sure that you understand it. It's okay to say, I need to have a lawyer look at this. It is a legal binding contract. And, you know, and it's probably got legalese in it from somewhere, and you need to make sure that you understand it and you can negotiate all of it. So once you get past the contract part, you're going to pay the deposit. You're going to get into the illustrator's schedule. Hopefully you luck out and they're sitting around, you know, with nothing to do. And as soon as they get paid, they're going to start working on your project. At that point, it shifts. Now you've got the legal stuff out. So now you've moved into the creative side of it, and each illustrator works different. I have a tendency, my authors, I give myself like a month to think and doodle. And when an author in my think and doodle kind of phase is going, hey, what do you have for me? What can I see? What can I do? I tend to have a hard time going, here's all the things, because it's still smushing about in my brain. But some illustrators are not like that. And you can, they'll have it like clockwork. It's in the contract. I have my doodle and thinking time. They're not surprised by that. They're not going to see anything from me for probably 3 weeks to a month if things aren't like just flying out of my brain. But what helps me is if the author will do send me some illustrator notes. So you have to send your illustrator the manuscript, because they need to see what part of it is visual, what can they pull out, where is the character doing something that's worth making a picture of, and that sort of thing. But if you have in your head that this is a scene where everybody's in front of a park and there's a water slide and all of that, you need to throw all of that out. So you send them your manuscript and you send them the illustrator notes. You can send them where you think page breaks are. They may not agree with you, and they may change that and talk to you about that. Again, it's a creative process that just keeps, it's ever evolving. But when an author says, I don't know what I want, you just do whatever, that is a red flag for me, because I cannot crawl into your head. You do have an idea. You might not know how to articulate it, but you have some thought of how this is supposed to look to you. And I have a completely different one. And if it's only left up to me, I'm going to end up doing work more than once, because I'm going to do it my way. And then you're going to tell me you don't like it, and then I got to change it. So if you have those illustrator notes in the beginning, then I can take that and I can do what's called a storyboard. And a storyboard is just basically, I take a big piece of paper, I make a bunch of little squares on it. Each one is a page, and I start putting like little stick people of where I think where things are gonna go, what that's gonna look like. And then from there, I might do some rough sketches, some character development sketches, and all of that goes to you, and you have to look at it and give me some feedback. And that part is really the fun part, just kind of figuring out what this story that you've created, how can I make it more engaging, more fun, just kind of take it to that next level. And it's nice to have somebody to collaborate with. So that part's probably my favorite, is when you're just trying to get it all down. Then we go through the storyboard, we go through the rough sketches, we go through the characters. So I've created, the dragon that you need, or who's the main character or whatever. And so we get a feel for colors and all of that other stuff. And you don't really, as an author, all of that part, you just kind of wait for it to kind of show up, and then throw some feedback in. And if you're working with an illustrator that that really knows what they're doing, that part is simple for you. If you're having problems with communicating with your illustrator, that is the time that you need to really kind of address that. And don't be afraid. It's not. There's nothing personal about this. It's a business transaction, and your illustrator should be open to listening to the feedback that you have. So then you, the author or the publisher, approve the sketches. You make the second payment, and the illustrator takes all of the things, the sketches that you've done, and makes them, finalizes them, puts color in if there's color involved, and that process, depending on how it's done, a lot of illustrators work digitally. That seems to go faster. I don't. I know some people work as a hybrid with that. They sketch and then move it to digital. But whatever their process is, that's the part where they're just starting to kind of do things, kind of get to that finished stage. And at that time, it's okay to ask your illustrator for, some photos of it in progress, that kind of thing, because that sort of thing is helpful when you're trying to promote a book that you're about to publish. Teasers. Here's the main character. So you can ask for all of that kind of stuff throughout the process, and really, while your illustrator is doing that sort of work, you should be doing more marketing anyway. So in that way, your illustrator can provide you with some content that you can throw out to get people excited about your book. And then your illustrator's done. Bingo bango. You make the final payment, and they send the files in whatever format the files are supposed to be to whomever is supposed to get them. So that's pretty much the process. Go ahead. No?
I have a quick question, because we only have about 10 minutes left, but I don't think this will take very long. What constitutes completion of the artwork? The submission of the artist's final work to the publisher or the author, or the acceptance of the final work by the author or the publisher?
The author is the final say on if there are any changes, and having change, whatever the change process is, that's something that should be decided in the contract, because that can be a pricing thing. Sometimes it's something that the illustrator did, so they don't charge you for fixing it. If you were clearly supposed to have drawn, a blue dog, and all of a sudden the dog is purple, the author can say, no, the dog was supposed to be the other color, and the illustrator should change it because it was their mistake. But when all of a sudden the picture, everything is done, and somebody says, well, I really wish there was a tree in the tree house, that's an addition. That's not a correction. And that's probably going to cost extra money. So the author has to sign off on it. Now, sometimes, and I think I made a couple extra slides in case there was extra time, but there was sometimes your illustrator just gives you the digital version of the completed artwork. Some illustrators, like me, I like to have control over putting the words on the page as well. So I do like pre-formatting, because especially in a picture book, the placement of the words, and even the font, or even if you're adding color in, if it's the red dog chased the blue ball and you wanted to make the word red be red and all of that, that's something that I feel is kind of, for me, that's part of the overall art of the page. And so I always do a mock-up of it with the whole thing. So when I'm done, the files that I have created are everything. I've done the cover, the back cover, I've done the entire interior layout, and it's basically ready to go to the printer or be uploaded from me. Not every illustrator does that. A lot of them will just do the artwork, and then you have to find somebody who's going to do the layout and the formatting and stuff for you. But again, it just kind of depends on what's up. I just had some glossary terms if anybody wants to hear about those, but if we're running tight on time, I can take more questions or whatever works.
Are there any questions? Yes, Eileen. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to ask you, I wasn't able to make the whole conference due to my doctor's advice, because I'm a severe asthmatic, and I so desperately wanted to hear your take on the key speaker, Stephen Barry. And were there any key points that you learned from him to help you with your what you do?
I actually was I was actually manning the registration desk. I didn't hear a word he said after "Hi, everyone." So I'm probably not the person to ask about to ask that question. I didn't hear any of it.
Well, I
Okay,
am
I was going
actually
to
coding.
ask you just quickly then, is there any way that FAFA members can get a hold, because there were a lot of people just due to health reasons that weren't able to attend, that we could get a copy, even if it's, there's a charge from it, so that FAFA can, that we can get a copy of those speakers or have that presented? Is there a way to do that?
So, and any other board member who wants to jump on and correct me if I am incorrect. But most of the speakers agreed to give us their slide presentations. And so those, as far as I know, are supposed to go to people who attended, who attended, and also members, whether you attended or not. And there will be, I believe, those will be available in your FAFA account. So when you go to myfafa.org and log in, as long as you're logged in, you should be able to go right to your account, and you should be able to download them. I would say that that's probably going to take about a month for us to get all that stuff in and everything, but they'll let everybody know when that happens. But yeah, so that I believe is on the agenda.
Thank you, Patty, so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve Berry did not have slides. However, I am coding the surveys from all of the workshops. And I can tell you the thing that in Steve Berry's case that was most helpful was that people were writing down as what they found the best takeaway is to keep at it, just to stick with it. It's about finding the right opportunity and being there when that window opens, as much as it is writing good content. You can write a lot of good content. So I would say that was, for a lot of the people that attended, that was a big takeaway. Yes, Jennifer.
I could be heard?
Yes, you can be heard.
Yeah, I don't know anyways, yes, thanks for your time. And I am also an illustrator, and
Yay!
thank you. And Ginger helped me with one of my books, the formatting. So I don't know what size, 8.5 by 8.5 is what I did the drawings. I mean, the book, but the drawings, yes. I don't know what size to make my drawings. I get really cluttered with too many ideas. And is it better to make them bigger to reduce down, or should I keep them the same size as 8.5 by, or leave a little margin? I get all tongue-tied with this stuff. Or you know what I'm saying?
If you're bleeding it off, if you're bleeding it off the page, then yeah, you want to make it a little bit bigger, so that when they cut it, you're not leaving white spaces. So like this book, all of the pages went off to the side. So just add like a quarter inch on the live sides. The gutter you're going to want to stay out of anyway.
So I'm sorry. So is that a full bleed?
The gutter you don't want.
Is that a full bleed?
Yeah.
It's beautiful the way that is. If
Yes.
if I don't full bleed, I'm sorry. What size
Yeah.
would I margins? What if I have? I do.
I'm sorry, you keep cutting out a little bit. You do.
I do a lot of line drawings, you know, like coloring books and stuff. So
Okay. So you probably don't need that bleed off. So you just, especially with like a coloring book, you just need to stay off the edges so that nothing's getting chopped. If you're taking the images all the way to the edge, add like a quarter inch and just take it out, and then that way when they cut it to the 8.5, they'll chop some of that stuff off the edges.
Okay, and I'd like to be my coach.
And
You have I'd love to talk to you more offline, but or do you recommend? Yeah, a book, but I'd like to talk to you sometime if you have time sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll stick around a little bit after and I'll send you I'll give you my email address.
Okay.
And we can connect.
Thank you. Good job.
If somebody else wants it too, I can, it's not like it's secret. I can just, okay. Okay. The easiest thing is to use publisher at pjinxpress.com. So publisher at pjinxpress.com. And if you drop me a line there and have questions specifically about being an illustrator, thank you, Tara. You're so smart. Between my phone and my keyboard, I don't know. That's why I need Tara. Yeah, if you have questions about being an illustrator or anything like that, absolutely, just throw it out, and I'll be glad to. I'll tell you what I know for whatever that's worth.
It's worth a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and also Tara put some information in there about the Creative Commons. I think it's Creative Commons about images too. And Bruce, I think, also put a comment. Read the chats. We are at 8 o'clock, so we want to be mindful of other people's commitments. So if you want to leave, you can. But Patty, do you have a few minutes to hang on? If they're
sure, I do.
Okay. So so we will. Some of us will stay on, and if there are other questions, but otherwise, people can feel free to leave as well.
Bye, whoever's leaving. Okay, now the rest of you just stare.
Yeah.
You're reading the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I couldn't get the microphone on my laptop to work, so my phone is blocking the chat while it's laying there so that I have a microphone. So how many of you guys are illustrators? Okay. How many of you guys write children's books? Okay. How many of you guys publish children's books?
Okay.
How many of you just had nothing better to do than to come and listen to me talk today? I'm waiting for Tara. Tara.
I'm here for you, Patty.
Yeah.
Aww.
Oh, there we go.
You were so missed.
Hey.
Oh, very cute.
Bruno the poodle.
I can't even draw a realistic looking stick figure, so,
Very cute.
I stick with the words.
I did see that Bruce said that he had knew somebody who provided photos for inspiration to their illustrator, and I did a book. It won a FAFA award, and they did not. By the way, they did not buy an extra medal for me. I was a little sad about that, but. But it was based on their dog and their kid. So they gave me pictures of their dog and their kid, and I cartooned them, and so and did that. So yeah, so definitely as reference material. If you've got characters, then yeah, photos definitely help. Also, if there's in that same book, there was a place that the family vacationed, and in the Keys, and so one of the pictures it involved this big resort in the back, which was kind of so yeah. So photos can definitely help.
What book was that? Or is that
It was called Bodie the Beach Dog. I thought I had a copy sitting here, but I don't. But it's called Bodie the Beach Dog.
Bodie the beach dog.
Bodie, Bode. Yeah, Bodie the Beach Dog. He's afraid of the water, and yet then later in the story rescues a puppy and decides that you can overcome your fear. Children's books with messages. I'm a big fan. So, yeah. you have a question? Are you also a big fan?
I do have, I just have a thank you to you and the board for I've never been to convention, and I was so grateful I was able to make the banquet. I cannot thank you enough. The effort and the time that went into that was incredible. Incredible. And I just wanted to put this out there. Yeah, thank you to each and every one of you. I don't even know what to say. I was blown away. If you need help next year with anything in that direction, I would love to just get in touch with me, and I would love to help you out.
Okay.
Somebody write her name down. Write it down now.
Write it down. Yep.
I can do baskets and other things, and I'd be more than willing to participate.
Oh, you can do basket. You can do baskets.
Oh yeah, I can do baskets.
Okay.
This is being
Writing your name
recorded.
down, baby.
If somebody wouldn't mind, since who was the gentleman that, I don't know, might have been Bruce, I'm not sure. Somebody got up there and walked away with so many medals around his neck, I couldn't keep track. What is his name? And what books did he put out?
That might have been Terry Lewis. Terry.
That was my first thought too. It was Terry Lewis.
Yeah, Terry Lewis is he wrote a crime thriller, historical fiction.
Yeah.
Incognito.
Well, Mike Gaylor had 3 goals for, I don't know.
It was getting heavy. I was watching him try to get off the stage.
Yeah.
Well,
it's beautiful.
You can't sneak up on people once you win more than one award because they clink together.
Yeah.
And then you can't sneak up on them anymore. Hello, kitty. I don't know why you're fighting it, Tara. Let the cat in.
You knew he was coming.
No, there's Kitty. Kitty, here's Kitty.
I've had a lot of fun. I've got a new book. Part of the reason that I needed to step down from the board and let somebody else take my spot was I have for 3 years had this same book. I'm working on this same book. It's 32 pages. I may have mentioned that earlier. 32 pages. It's taken me now about 3 years to get the time to redo the illustrations and release that. And my first 2 children's books, I got my rights back from my publisher, so I'm re-releasing those this fall because I will probably redo the illustrations again. I don't know. You people who are illustrators, how many times do you redo the illustrations? It's like painting the wall in your living room. It's like, I'm tired of this color. It will now be blue.
Yep.
So Alice, I have those.
Did Alice must have dropped off. She had a question, but I don't see her now.
Goodbye.
Oh, she's waving goodbye. Okay.
Okay.
Like,
what was it? A good question?
So who's the new FAFA president? Since I haven't had a chance to read email, I'm assuming the newsletter went out and said.
Renee Garrett.
Yep. I just put her email in the chat.
Okay.
I also know that the book awards, the book awards are opening up what date?
Soon.
No idea what he said.
September?
Soon? Yes, in September sometime. Also, for those of you who are speakers.
September 15th.
Okay, September 15th.
Earliest bird is a $20-something discount. No,
So
$30 discount. $30 discount off the entry price.
So once that happens, you'll be able to submit books at any time. Last year, they added an illustrators award, and I don't know that it got as much attention as it should have, but it will going forward because I will make sure that all of my people know. But so if you do a children's book and your illustrator does a really good job, you might want to consider entering their book. Also, speaker submissions, I believe, are also opening within the next couple of weeks. So if you wanted to come and be a speaker, or if you had a speaker that you would like to recommend, they can go ahead and I think it's probably been another couple of weeks, and then they can submit their proposals and everything there. We want to make sure that we get the board wants to make sure we get all of the after feedback, all of the conference feedback from the attendees to see what they thought was missing that maybe we need to do, and then we focus on filling in those slots with whatever it is.
I would like to suggest to those who are on the board who are here that we set things up so that the board vote can be done maybe in advance online so that all FAFA membership can participate, and then have it announced at the conference.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about there, but the vote for the vote before the membership meeting, is that what you're talking about?
So the typically when I've been to the conference in the past, the vote for the board takes place at the conference. And
Right.
so if you don't attend the conference, you don't get to vote, but we're FAFA members.
Yeah. Right. Now, so I believe that an email has gone out. I could be wrong.
I'm behind on my email, so that could be the case too.
Yes. So yes. So if it hasn't, it's supposed to be, and giving everybody a chance to vote ahead of time. So.
Okay, I missed that this year then.
Oh no! We haven't had the annual meeting is this weekend. Somebody.
So how do you know who the president
Yeah,
is?
we separated the,
Yeah, we separate. So we kind of liked the idea that last year, because we didn't have the conference, that we had the annual meeting, which normally takes place at lunch at the conference. We took that time and threw in Steve Berry as a speaker and kind of took that space, because we did like the way that that members who were not able to attend still got to vote on things like board members and bylaws or whatever else it is that the changes that that the membership has to be involved in, plus getting all of the updates for what happened over the year and all of that other happy stuff, getting to meet the new president and all of that stuff. Worked out really well last year when we were in COVID. It was probably the only part about the COVID and FAFA that I was like, oh, that really works. So that part got moved forward. So if I am assuming, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not on the board, so anymore, so I'm a little less involved in that. But I think that the email went out with the votes, with what you're voting on, with bios of the board members who are running and rerunning and all of that. So I would check there, since no one seems to be able to say yes, yay or nay that that's already happened or it's happening today, or I don't know the exact scheduling, but it's supposed to.
Do we know
But
when
we will see you next year, Tara, because whether you speak or whether you just come to hang out, it has to happen.
do we know when the medals are being mailed out?
Yes, they are all in their envelopes as of tonight. They were not as of yesterday, but they are all in their envelopes tonight, and they will be going out tomorrow.
Nice. Yay.
Yay! Yay! It was fun. I had a great time at the conference this year, and I thought that the speakers were really good. I thought that the turnout was better than I thought that it might be. There was a brief period of time where I thought it would be the board members and about as many people as are on this Zoom right now. But there was a lovely turnout for.
Sarah, if you had been with us, you would have been clanking your way off the stage.
Yeah, she would have.
Triple medal winner this year.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, if she's not winning an award, usually one of her authors is winning an award, because they do good work at her place.
And this is the first time that I haven't been there to either celebrate our authors. I know one of mine did go down, but I didn't find out until the next morning that she was down there.
Oh.
So.
Well, we could have invited her in for, to take your place in the
wine
club.
We have
yes, Pat?
I think that's Pat.
That is Pat. We can stop recording, by the way.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
Pat has to do that, right?
Yes.
She just muted herself, so.
She was probably talking to somebody else, not us.
Yeah.
She wasn't talking to us. That's okay. We can cut it off.
Yeah.
Later. So yeah, I would tell you who was going to talk next month, but I don't know. I will say that if there's anything in particular that you would like to hear, something that this has come up in the project that you're working on or whatever, or you have questions about, if you just drop an email to Renee or Pat, that's still the past president, or Renee Garrison, and then tell them, or
me. I just put my email in the chat. I can do that too.
So that way we're providing content people actually want to know about, and that means that we can get somebody who actually knows what that is, what that topic is. So we'll all learn together, and then that makes this useful. Now, eventually, and not too distant future, all of these will be available on our YouTube channel. Chris Gibson, if you were at the conference, you probably got to meet him if you didn't know him already. Chris has taken it upon himself as a board member to work on our YouTube channel. He's quite the YouTube guy, got a gazillion followers and whatnot. And he's going to start curating some of the content that we create through here, or different things that we do. So that'll be fun. So we want to make sure we have good content. So if there's something that you think that you want to know about the publishing industry and you do not know it yet, we will find somebody who does know the answers and they will come and talk. So I feel like I'm like sitting in don't tell mom I'm reading.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm like, it's dark. I have my little light. Can read.
I was thinking dungeon, but I guess that's just
I'm looking at how many of us wear glasses, and I'm thinking I was not the only one who read under my covers late at night.
All right. I'm now feeling okay.
Down for a second.
I was 14 when I could no longer see stars at night.
I just wanted to ask some of the other members there that were able to attend the conference. Sam, your comment was very helpful on our key speaker. I was wondering if any of the other people here were at the conference and what was their takeaway, and what did they learn from the speakers that were present. If they'd like to comment, I'd like to hear what went on. I missed so much.
I know there's a thread on the Facebook group where people are sharing their takeaways.
Oh, cool.
Yep. I don't normally, because being on the board for so long, and then especially in the higher leadership roles for the past couple of years, I missed most of the conference. But this year, because I was stepping down, I got to attend. Actually, I attended 3 of them completely, and I learned some things. It was it's nice to, especially if you have the time to ask questions, so you can get specific answers. When Lorna Owens did the legal part of it, and I only saw probably about 3/4 of hers. I wasn't there when she first started, but she basically, her entire presentation was just, what are your questions? She said her theory was, I could stand here and talk about this, but a lot of times you guys only have a couple questions and you don't know where a lawyer is, and you don't maybe want to pay to ask a couple of dumb questions. So the floor is open for dumb questions, smart questions, whatever. And she spent the entire 90 minutes basically just answering people's individual questions about, copyrights and
Yes.
all kinds of stuff like
And
that.
she did, and she didn't charge us.
No.
2 years ago, same topic, the same thing happened. The legal expert came and we couldn't read her PowerPoints, and she just answered questions for 90 minutes.
And,
I was going to add
that's
that
helpful.
Tina Wainscott's presentation was Friday afternoon on the agent hunt. Every writer needs an agent or would like an agent to find a publisher for them, and she did a really good job of laying that out, how not to insult them or scare them away or get yourself immediately tossed into the slush pile or totally ignored.
I had a great conversation with her afterwards about why they don't take poetry.
Probably because it doesn't sell.
That's what they said. And of course, you know, my boss is a poet who is quite successful at it, but I just thought that it was funny that they don't. Like,
Well, it's I think
none of the agents.
yeah, I think what for commercial presses, I don't think poetry sells, but I think poetry can sell really well with individual authors. It wouldn't be surprising to me if actually what we're seeing within the publishing industry and profitability is that self-published poets are doing much better than those that are actually published by commercial presses that are largely, mainly because from what I can tell, the revitalization of poetry is really based on personality now. And then once you're at a certain level, like in case of your boss, my guess is there's not going to be a whole lot of benefit to going with a traditional press to him at this point.
He actually has one book that is traditionally published. They came after him and they came looking for him, and he published that. And he's in talks with a major traditional publisher who has found that as their niche because nobody else would take it. Who's doing very well in that modern poetry space. And they're talking about a book deal now. So
cool.
I have a friend who I think poetry becomes very niche, and I have a friend who focuses on what he called bar poems. And so his one of his books is called, Make It a Double. The subtitle is something about more poems from my 10-year bender inside of Heaven's Dive Bar, but it's a 2020 Writer's Digest Award winner, so he has a series of books all around that. The first one was called The Swinging Door Saloon. And, all of them kind of have a similar feel to them. They're all self-published, but he does really well because when you niche something like that, even if you're niched within something niche like poetry, it's very easy to find your target market.
That book was, the sequel was in the contest this year.
Oh, was
and
it?
I think it's just the fact that there were a lot of poetry entries, probably 16 or so of them. And you can only get to have 3.
My impression is that poetry is becoming more and more popular. And I think so I'm also in Tallahassee Writers Association. And what I've seen in our authors, we're seeing a lot more poetry that's being published. A lot of it's self-published. And so whereas 5 years ago, I think we had maybe one poetry book in our mobile bookstore, now I think we've got a half dozen. And so it's interesting to see how it seems to be coming back, and the variety of styles is really interesting as well. And of course, Pat Stanford has poetry book out, Motley Miscellany.
My first publication, my first items that were published were all poems.
Yeah.
So I got my start there too.
Well, I think that for Pierre, he started writing these very long, very deep, very twisty kind of poems, and in this era of instant gratification, social media, get in, get out, his poems have gotten much shorter. They're more profound in way less words. It's like he says he writes poetry in quotes, and the quotes are easy to send out in in mail and stuff. Why are we all waving? Who's leaving?
Bruce is leaving.
Bruce is leaving. I'm gonna have to leave too. I've been
I gotta go
neglecting my
eat.
dog all day, and she's not happy with me.
And my
So,
husband, same.
and she's
God
All
bless
right.
you all, and thank you for all your input.
right.
You're great. Thank
And
you.
the Ogden Nash,
Thanks for coming, you guys.
you heard of Ogden Nash? Ogden Nash,
Ogden Nash. Mhm.
that was my favorite book I would take with me even when I backpacked. I put in my backpack because I couldn't leave my books behind when I was 8. I got in trouble for that.
Yeah, see? Reading under the covers late at night.
Sounds like my daughter. She
Yeah,
still reads
all
under
the
the
smart
covers,
kids.
even though she's out on her own. So, all right.
It's the best place.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.